All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Billy Lahr, who is the host of the Mindful Midlife Crisis, which is a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Billy, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming on. And we like to jump right in. So you start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun. That'd be great.
Ooh, all right. I'm actually in Seoul, South Korea right now, and I quit my job back in September of 2021 so I could travel around. I'm single, never married, no kids, so I guess you could say I'm living the dream. I have a lot I have a lot of flexibility. I don't have the same responsibilities that other people have. I kind of like to throw that out there just in case people are like, yeah, but you don't have the same response. I get it. I don't have the same responsibilities that everybody has, but at the same time, a lot of the things that we'll talk about here today are applicable to everybody, regardless of your situation. But I worked in education for 21 years. I taught English for 15 years, and I worked as a dean of students for 6. And the thing is, when you're a dean of students, you're always the bad guy. Nobody likes the dean of students. I mean, they make movies about the dean of students being the bad guy, right? And so that's what I was, is I was constantly delivering bad news to people. And I just got tired of it because the people are always upset with you. And I didn't want to be around that anymore. And I'd always wanted to travel overseas. And, I even thought about teaching overseas for a while. And so when my dog passed away in April of 2020, and I was like, all right, now I can make plans for this leave of absence that I can go on. And I would, thought about possibly returning back to my job in education, but there just wasn't going to be a way for me to transition back into that position after this traveling experience. So I I went to Portugal for 2 months. I went to Spain for 2 weeks. I took a little side trip to Dakar, Senegal, because it's my goal to paddleboard off the coast of every single continent. And then I came back to the United States for a while, went to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for a month, came back to the States, and then went to South Korea. When I was in Seoul, I made a lot of great connections through this meetup hiking group. And I want to talk about the importance of socializing a little bit later here. But the people that I met through that hiking group in Seoul just kind of changed my whole outlook on life. And I was only planning on being in Korea for another like 2 weeks after my month in Seoul, but it would have felt incomplete had I left. So I went to Jeju Island for 10 days. I went to Busan for a week. And during that time, in those 2 weeks, I figured out a way to stay in South Korea for another month. And so I went back to Seoul and stayed there for an extra month and really deepened those relationships that I had made earlier. And I liked it so much that when I went back to the United States, I put my condo on the market, sold it, and came right back for the fall. And if you can spend spring and fall in Seoul, you've kind of hit the jackpot, because that's when it's really beautiful. Now it's getting a little chilly here now, but my next stop is Thailand, and then Singapore, and then Japan. So I'm continuing the Mindful Midlife Crisis World Tour for the next couple of months. And then, when I'm sure around July, I'm going to have to make some grown up decisions. But right now, right now I'm just on the roller coaster of life at this point, and enjoying the ride.
Gotcha. And so, correct me if I'm wrong. Did this start in 2020 and it's been going since? Because I noticed you had some bouncing back and forth there.
Yeah, in 2021, September of 2021 is when I left for Portugal. The planning process started in 2020
I see.
after my dog passed away, because then I was like, okay, if I'm going to take this leave, I can't request the leave until October of 2020, and I can't take the leave until September of 2021.
I
And then
got you.
yeah, that everything worked out. So it's going well. Things are going well. I'm really enjoying the experience. And people are like, "Well, is this your Eat, Pray, Love?" First of all, no, because that book is ridiculous. I have a lot of issues with that book. This is not my Eat, Pray, Love moment. This is more of an opportunity to have different experiences than I have had before, but I'm really enjoying making new connections with people and embracing some of the aspects of my personality that I don't feel got to be highlighted or that got to flourish when I was back in Minnesota. And so it's just really been a freeing experience in that regard.
And which parts of your personality are those?
Well, so I'm an avid mindfulness practitioner. I'm actually in the process of earning my mindfulness teacher certification. And I practice mindfulness so that I can be this level of obnoxious because I have a lot of energy and I'm a pretty intense individual. And in Minnesota, I'm pretty direct as well. And in Minnesota, that can rub people the wrong way. And I have had to learn how to manage that and dial it down a little bit. In Korea, people like direct. People like it, and I have surrounded myself here with people who embrace that energy and embrace that intensity and gravitate towards it. Whereas when I was working in high school, I think that energy was resisted.
Mm.
And I get it. I get it. Like you're a teenager, you don't want someone who with my kind of energy delivering bad news to you. I get it. But here I feel like I've kind of been reborn and I've had opportunities to do things like MC a live music event. I've had opportunities to organize events around Seoul, almost like I'm a tour guide. Like, my dream job would be to be a tour guide. I love that kind of stuff. I love people taking people around to places that they've never been to before and showing them, hey, check this out and that sort of thing. And there's still the teacher in me, and I've had those opportunities here, and it's really, it filled my cup, so to speak, in terms of how much I get to enjoy my life doing these kinds of things. And I know that when things shift around and maybe I have a few more responsibilities on my plate, that maybe I won't be able to do those things as often. But now that I've felt this, I know that it's going to be important for me to maintain those certain aspects in my life. And I think that's another thing too that is important to talk about, is that particularly as people get older and they get married, or maybe they have a partner, or maybe they have kids, that those things become priorities, which they should. But then the things that they used to do where that they would enjoy, those things fall to the wayside. And then the marriage and the kids and the job become all consuming. And then that's all that life is. And there really is so much more to life. Is that easy for me to say? Yes, it's very easy for me to say, and I recognize that. But at the same time, I also want to encourage people to not lose those interests that they had, or at least seek out new interests, new challenges, make new connections. And for men approaching middle age, that is crucial. That is crucial because men at middle age, is what research is showing, is that the number of close friends that we have is dwindling, and we're becoming more and more isolated,
Mm.
and that is not a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love how you are just urging people to keep in touch with those interests, because really what that's doing is keeping in touch with yourself. And I think when people are trying to fill up the other cups of their life, when their cup is empty, that's when you lead to that burnout, that stress, that anger that tears marriages apart, that traumatizes children, that like does all the stuff that we all don't talk about enough, aren't honest about enough. And so it is really important to make room for the things that are important to you outside of like anybody else's expectations of you, if that makes sense. So I really like that you point that out. But now I want to jump into your motivation. What really gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Making connections. I really look forward to socializing. I really enjoy, I enjoy being a guest on a podcast. I enjoy hosting my podcast. Those connections and just thriving in a social element are things that I really, really enjoy. So, what motivates me is knowing that at some point in time, I get to connect with somebody and we get to talk about either something that I'm passionate about or something that they're passionate about, and we can learn from each other and we can challenge each other and we can reflect and grow those sorts of things. I really enjoy that piece. I'm still very passionate about teaching. That's still something that I'm really passionate about. I just don't want to do it in a high school setting anymore. I did it for 21 years, so I'm good.
Uh,
And maybe that's why I don't want to have kids either. It's just like I had thousands of kids that I dealt with every single day, and the best part of it was when they went home. I mean, and that's not the best part of it, but it's the piece that is just like I got to just sort of chill and regroup.
yeah,
And I give a lot of credit to parents. Parenting is really, really difficult just as an observer, right? And I think what helped me is that I got to be objective in a lot of those situations because I just saw things as here's what happened, here's the information that I have, and here's the consequence. And it's difficult for parents to separate the emotion from the situation because you want to think that your kid didn't do a certain thing or wouldn't behave a certain way. And it's like, listen, the kid made a mistake. They're going to get a consequence for it. What's more important here is like the stain on their record, quote unquote, or learning from the experience and moving on from the experience through growth so that if they're faced with a situation like this again, that they know how to how to conduct themselves in a more appropriate manner, in a more respectful manner. So that teaching aspect is still really important to me, and that's what I look forward to in terms of being a mindfulness teacher. And I keep kind of coming back to this is like I feel like I'm the mindfulness teacher that people who are high intensity need to have.
mm,
Because if I'm running, with this much energy, how am I still able to like keep myself from burning out, or how am I able to keep myself from overloading or overheating? And I do it through mindfulness. And it's not to say that I don't, overheat from time to time, but through my mindfulness practice, I have been able to recognize when that is occurring so that I don't get so far in the red that my engine blows, so to speak.
I gotcha. Well, tell us about your mindfulness practice. I feel like everybody's wanting to hear about it right now.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you the backstory of it all. In 2012, 2013, I was really struggling with my mental health at that time to the point where I was having frequent anxiety attacks. The Sunday scaries hit me all the time. I was not sleeping well, and I was experiencing bouts of depression that were leading into suicidal ideation. And I remember distinctly it was in February of 2013, and it was a Saturday, and I was supposed to go to a friend's birthday party. And I thought to myself, all right, I'll leave at 7 o'clock. I'll get to this party about 7:30, yada, yada, yada. Well, it's 6:51 p.m. And I don't know why I still remember the time, but I do. But at 6:51 p.m., I had this anxiety attack. And when I have anxiety attacks, it feels like a boa constrictor wrapping around me.
Mm.
And then my shoulders will lurch forward and my hands will crinkle up and my heart will start racing. I'm not able to breathe naturally. And I don't know how long this lasted, but it exhausted me. It was emotionally and physically spent having, having come out of that anxiety attack, that I texted my friend and said, you know what, I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to make it to the party tonight. Sorry. And I woke up the next day and I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because it was a weekend. Like when I had, usually shouldn't work be what's stressing me out. So why is this carrying over into the weekend? And this was a party that I was really looking forward to. These were friends that I was really looking forward to seeing. So I knew that at that point in time, like I really needed help. And I was very fortunate that my best friend has his PhD in forensic neuropsychology. And so there was a therapist office right around the corner from me. And so I researched that and I sent him a list of the therapists there. And I said, listen, you know me best. Take a look at these qualifications and tell me which of these therapists is the best fit for me, because like I need help right now. And so he sent over a name, Mindy Ben Dixon. So I signed up with Mindy Ben Dixon, and one of the first things that I told her was, I don't want to do medication. I want to be able to do talk therapy without medication. And I can maybe talk about that a little bit later too. But she said, no, we're gonna use something called mindfulness in order to help you navigate your anxiety and this depression and understand, where it's coming from, and more importantly, how to manage it when you start having these emotions. And I was going to her twice a month, and I went for 6 months, and I found, I'm feeling pretty good. And I was still having anxiety attacks, but they were less intense. I was able to identify where in my body that they would begin and self-talk in a way where I was able to manage them and keep them at bay. And when the next school year started, I would my sophomores, I had them for 2 years. So I would have them as freshmen and I would have them as sophomores as well. And I remember it was around October. And one of my students said, Mr. Lahr, you seem like you're in a better mood this year. And that was it. I mean, the fact that it was so palpable that they felt it was all the evidence that I needed, that this mindfulness practice that that I was using, that I had implemented, that I had cultivated into my life, was having an impact, not just on me, but my relationships with other people, my presence in a classroom. And so, it then became a sense of gratitude in that I wanted to share this experience of mindfulness with others. And so I got more and more curious about it. And I took a class with another teacher who was at my high school. She was leading it because she had gone through the mindfulness, she had her own mindfulness practice as well. And through that, I got referred to Mindful Schools, and they have a mindfulness fundamentals course. So I did that. And then following that mindfulness fundamentals course, they also have a mindful teachers essentials course. And you could complete that. And in completing that, then you could lead mindfulness exercises, mindfulness lessons in your classroom. And I thought, listen, if this is having an impact on me, it most likely is going to have an impact on my students as well. Now, they didn't respond to it in the way that I was hoping that they would. And I think it's because they saw it as therapy, and and some of them weren't open to that yet, right? And I get that. And in hindsight, I think that I would have tried to approach that a little bit differently. Um, it didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped. And I think the other part of that too is that I didn't have the knowledge base or enough experience with it to present it in a way where they received it. And I get that now. And so, but I continued my mindfulness practice here for years, since 2013. And when I moved out of education, there was still this desire to want to teach. And again, this idea of extending gratitude for the opportunities and for the experiences that I've had, and the ability to reflect, learn, and grow from all of these experiences. I attribute that to my mindfulness, and that's why I wanted to get this mindful teacher certification. And the part of the reason why I started the podcast is because I wanted to bring more awareness to mental health, particularly men's mental health. I wanted to bring more awareness to social emotional learning and how that can have a positive impact on our day-to-day lives and how we navigate getting older, because getting older is a transition. And changing the language around a midlife crisis to a midlife pivot, and or a midlife transition. And how do we transition? Well, we have to transition through awareness, because we don't make transitions without awareness. Because if we do make transitions without awareness, then we're either still stuck doing the same things and seeing the world in the same way, or or we just stop growing. We stop being curious. And I think as soon as we stop being curious, whether it's in relationships, whether it's with ourselves, whether it's with the things that we enjoy, whether it's with our children, whether it's in our careers, the second that we stop being curious is the second that we stop enjoying life and the second that we stop growing in life. And mindfulness, part of that is to approach each practice with openness, curiosity, and non judgment. And though those all sound like simple concepts, the brain does what the brain does, and it complicates things. And so, in order to kind of train our brain, in order to become more open and more curious, mindfulness allows us to do that. And if people are like, this sounds like a bunch of woo woo BS, there's research behind this, right? There's research around this, and people can look up that research too, because you're developing your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that regulates emotion. And mindfulness has been shown to improve the gray matter or the white matter that's in your prefrontal cortex, so that you can regulate the emotion, and so that your amygdala, which is your animal brain, your fight, flight, or fright response, your prefrontal cortex can kind of cool that down, so that you don't go into reactive mode, but instead you can go into response mode.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think mindfulness, it's something that I've when I jumped into kind of self-improvement, reading a bunch of books, it kept coming up. Like people would talk about meditation, or they talk about like even like repeating words to yourself, or just emptying your mind, or just being present, going for a walk, feeling nature, whatever it may be. It just kept coming up, kept coming up. And it was The Power of Now, that book by Eckhart Tolle, that really did it for me. Because when he started talking about mindfulness and he started talking about his transformation of how just being in the now really changed his life, it just completely shifted my mind towards mindfulness. So that's awesome, man. Do you have a main mindfulness practice that you do, or do you switch it up every now and
So, I mean, the breathing is always an anchor, right? So always coming back to your breath, because your breath is always present with you. Because my terrible joke is, if your breath is not with you, you've got bigger problems.
It's
So,
facts.
yeah. So your breathing is an anchor that you can always return to. So I like doing just simple breathing exercises. That's kind of my go-to. Lately though, I've been doing more loving kindness meditations, and I've not done these in the past. I think more so because, again, it kind of felt a little woo-woo, but but one of the tenets of mindfulness is compassion, and the idea around compassion is alleviating the suffering of others. And when I get down to the core of what my why is, though my why is not necessarily alleviating the suffering of others, my why is more encouraging people to reflect, learn, and grow as individuals. When people reflect, learn, and grow as individuals, it alleviates their suffering indirectly, right?
Yeah.
So I've been doing this loving kindness meditation in the morning. I do it in the shower. This is maybe TMI, but I could sit in a shower for 30 minutes to an hour. I just love
Oh
just
yeah.
being in the shower. To me, it's kind of like when people hop into a sauna, right? So sauna's too much for me. Shower's just right. So I like to sit in the shower, and I'll take a very long morning shower. But part of that is a loving kindness meditation. And in that loving kindness meditation, it starts off with me saying, may I feel safe. May I feel happy. May I feel healthy. May I feel loved. And and then I repeat that two more times. And then I call to mind somebody who I'm very close to, who I love. And I say, may that person, I use their name, may that person be safe. May that person feel happy. May they feel healthy. May they feel loved. And then you call to mind somebody who you don't really know, or you're neutral, or you might not even know their name. You might have just saw them on the bus, but they pop into your mind. You do the same thing for them. And where things really get challenging is when you call to mind someone with whom you may have a conflict. And maybe they don't even know that you're in conflict with them. It's just someone that you feel this, and it's someone that you may encounter on a regular basis. And then you extend it to them, and then you extend it to the whole world. And so doing that, I hadn't done it in a while. And I did it last week. And even just saying the first string of, may I feel happy, may I feel healthy, may I feel loved. What's interesting is that's the way I sign off every single episode of the podcast. I always say, thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Take care, friends. That's how I sign off every episode. For me to start off by saying, may I feel safe, may I feel happy, may I feel healthy, may I feel loved, elicited an emotional response that was surprising to me. And I've just kind of continued going on with it, because it's sort of that self-affirmation that I am enough. And self-esteem has certainly been something that I've battled with. That and so just kind of reminding myself that I deserve to be safe, that I deserve to be happy, healthy, and loved. And so does that person, and so does that person, and so does this person with whom I am in conflict, and so does the world. That has it has lightened me up a little bit,
Mm.
you know, in a figurative and in a literal sense, where I just feel lighter. And so I like implementing that one as well. But if I need a go-to meditation, it'll be the breath. And I'm actually aware of this now. In the beginning of this interview, I was I was coming in hot. I would had all sorts of energy. And as we started talking about mindfulness, then it brought awareness to that energy. And now I don't know if you can feel it, but I can feel it with me, where I've kind of settled in a little bit. And and I'm sure it's probably that the jitters about being on the show, and the uncertainty as to how the show is going to go. And you know you've made this a very safe space to be on the show. And so then I kind of now settled in through just unconscious mindfulness. That might even be an oxymoron there, but because I'm so accustomed to settling in through a mindfulness practice, that now I've unconsciously slowed things down in this interview, so that I'm not da 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 da, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I gotcha, and I did notice. I did notice. So that is interesting that you like brought it out and noticed it yourself and had that
Yeah,
awareness.
yeah.
That's really cool, man. Well, cool. Now we're going to jump into your dreams and goals. So tell us about your vision for the podcast and your vision for your life.
Yeah, so I had a chuckle when you sent this over to me and I saw dreams, because I'm so anti follow your dreams and follow your passions. I think,
Mhm.
and so whenever I get that, those are like, when I see dreams and I see passions, those are trigger words for me. So I'm like, but then when you talk about what's your vision, now that I like a lot, because that to me really speaks to it. And vision then can be laid out in steps, and you have your goals, that sort of thing. As far as the podcast, I think just like anybody who starts a podcast, you want to figure out a way to monetize it in some way, shape, or form. I don't know about you, but I'm paying to do my podcast. Like I have yet to monetize it yet, but I feel really good about the growth of the podcast in the last 2 years. By the end of 2022, I am on pace to hit over 30,000 downloads. And I just feel so good about that. And I've doubled the number of downloads in 2022 that I had in 2021. And if I can do that again next year, like, who knows where this podcast could go. I guess my podcasting hero, my podcasting idol, is Jordan Harbinger.
Okay.
And I love the Jordan Harbinger show. I listen at least to one or two episodes a week. The way that he has things set up on his website and the things that he is doing, that's sort of, he has laid out the roadmap for where I want to get in terms of podcasting. Now, am I going to get 1 million downloads a month? Probably not. I mean, maybe 10 years down the road. I mean, it took him 10 years to kind of get to that point. He had a head start in terms of, he was working in radio, and so he had those kind of connections. But he also talks very much about networking and the power of connections. And so for me, it's really important to maintain the connections that I make, not just on the show, but then around me as well. And being genuine within those connections, and making sure that I'm providing value to those connections in a multitude of ways, whatever it is that they see, that they have a need. so that it's not just one way, right? I would at some point love to be able to use the podcast as a way to bring in people who are interested in mindfulness so that I can lead mindfulness sessions with them. I very much enjoy presenting. So I would love to be a speaker and presenter at events to talk about mindfulness, to talk about social and emotional awareness. That's kind of my vision right now. And at the same time too, I'm also a certified personal trainer. So combining the mental and physical health component is very important to me. I would love to have I'd love to have my own gym, and then in that same facility have a podcast studio as well. In fact, I'd love to have that all in the same house. Or I'd like to have a house and then have it there, but then still have the opportunity to travel like I do. So I was actually listening to the Jordan Harbinger show, and Rob Dyrdek was on there. You remember Rob Dyrdek from like the MTV shows, Big and Rob, that kind of thing?
Yeah, wasn't he
He's a skateboarder.
he's a skateboarder and he had a really big show on MTV. It was like a prank show.
Ridiculousness.
Yes, ridiculousness.
So, you know, when listening to him, I kind of almost got a hint of hustle bro culture, which I think is very toxic. But when I listen to him talk about it, it's very genuine.
Yeah.
And he really is intentional each and every single day with how he spends his time and how he cultivates relationships. It's really quite impressive. I would encourage people to check out that Rob Dyrdek interview on the Jordan Harbinger show. Um, but
Yeah.
one thing that he talked about is going into kill mode.
Mm,
And that really resonated with me because that's kind of how I operate too. Where when I am determined to do something, then I will go into kill mode, meaning I'll spend 10, 12 hours a day working on something to make sure that it works, to make sure that it runs smoothly, to make sure that it grows in some way, shape, or form. Now, it has to be something that I'm passionate about. There are definitely things about podcasting that I am not passionate about, particularly around social media. I have no interest really in learning how to manage the social media aspect of promoting. That's not Those are not things that interest me. I would not spend 12 to 14 hours a day doing that. But there are things that I would do around the podcast where I would just get into a zone for extended periods of the day and extended weeks into months. But then I want to go into chill mode. And so, having traveled around, I think here for the last 2 years or going on 2 years, that's if I can cultivate that life where I can be in kill mode for 3 months and just crank out things in a facility where I have a home, but then I can do the podcast, but then I can also do personal training. That's the vision that I have right now. That's what I would love to be able to do. But then be able to head out somewhere and travel around for a month or two and experience new places or reconnect with friends that I've met while traveling. That a lot of times when you're traveling, you're meeting other travelers, and you find out that they live in Sweden, or they live in Ireland, or they live in Washington D.C. I'd like to go and spend time with them, but what I'm also finding is that with the luxury of time that I have right now, I like spending a month in a city so that I can really take my time with it. Because in 2014, 2018, I went to Europe and traveled around with the band Pearl. I didn't travel with Pearl Jam, but I followed Pearl Jam around Europe. I followed them around for 2 weeks in 2014 and a month in 2018. And it was, I mean, you were following them on their tour. So you're only in a city for 2 to 4 days. And as much fun as that was, I really enjoy just being in one city for a month. And I've been in Seoul for 3 months. And I'll be in Osaka for a month. I'll be in Tokyo for 5 weeks. I like that kind of travel so that I can do deeper dives, because when I was doing those 2 to 4 days, you try and hit everything in that amount of time. At least I do. Like I feel like I'm too much of a consumer, and trying to check things off of my list rather than enjoying the experience. And that's been part of my mindfulness learning too, is that, just enjoy the process. Because I very much am a destination person. That's just kind of how I operate. I like structure. I like knowing when things start and end. I mean, I worked in a school that things started and ended at the same time every single day. So that's very much ingrained in me. So part of my mindful meditation process is enjoying the process a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so interesting because for me, like I like to travel. I'll say like it's a big, big goal on my list. Young, don't really have the funds to do it right now, and I'm kind of in kill mode right now. Like I'm trying to like really grow stuff and blow stuff up. So travel isn't the highest priority, but in my head, I see myself probably going hard for like a month or two, and then I have to take the rest of the year off. Like it like I love to get out there and do stuff, but I'm also such a homebody. Like I am such a homebody. And so it's just interesting to see somebody who's like, yeah, I can go a month here, a month there, a month there. I'm like, whoo, but I'd be wiped. But I like the energy behind it, and I can tell that it's like, yeah, this is what you care about. This is how you want to lead your life, and I love that you're going after it. So
Yeah, and that the paradox is that the thing that I miss the most is stability.
yeah,
You know, so that's something that I really wish I had more of in my life. But at the same time, I'm willing to sacrifice that stability, or at least create stability in a different way wherever I am.
yeah,
And I do that through routines, and I do that through structure. Like those things are really, really important to me. Routines are really important to me because I want to start off my morning the same way every single day, because then for me, it just sort of sets the tone for the rest of the day.
yeah,
I want autonomy within that structure. I want flexibility within that structure in case I need it. But I mean, you think about the day to day, your day to day pretty much looks, the same in terms of you got to get up, you got to do this, you got to do this,
yeah,
right? I mean, your tasks are going to be different, but the as far as like the timeline, most things are pretty much the same.
yeah,
So then if I can reduce the number of choices that I have to make throughout the day, or I mean, that's where decisions come in. When you decide something, you're killing off other options.
yep,
So my routine comes down to the decisions that I'm going to make, and I'm going to kill off this option. I'm going to kill off that choice. And yes, choices are great, but decisions, in my opinion, lead to progress.
mm, yeah. I'm a big fan of decisions, and I'm also a huge fan of fast decisions because this may not be everybody's philosophy for sure, but just reading a lot of success literature, it's like the there's very seldom are you going to know 100% this is the right decision or 100% this is the wrong decision. So get all the evidence you can and then decide and just go with it and get the feedback and pivot if you need to. But make the decision because being stuck in analysis paralysis is one of the biggest barriers to success, honestly.
And I can speak to that because that I struggle with paralysis or analysis paralysis all the time. I struggle with the paradox of choice all the time. And generally, I'll be honest, I'm not the most efficient person in terms of I would much rather just do something and learn in the moment and make adjustments in the moment than than be inactive.
Yep.
But at the same time, I'm also somebody who, like, if I'm planning it for me, then my perfectionist will come
Oh,
out and I want everything to be exact because it impacts me directly. If it impacts me and a group of people, maybe I'll sacrifice the experience and so that we can make adjustments on the fly, that kind of thing. But if I'm the one who's being impacted number one, then I want it to be perfect. And so, sometimes I feel like that analysis paralysis does, you're right, does get in the way of progress. And it's just like, dude, just let's just go. Like we've thought about it long enough. Let's just go. Because
yep,
it's either now or never. And you have enough skill, you have enough talent, you have enough knowledge to move forward with it and progress with it. And you just have to do it. You're going to have to do it slower, maybe, than what you originally wanted, or you're going to have to make very quick adjustments as you go on. And I think when I look at the podcast, right? You know, I I'm at a point now where the last like I'm on season 6. So each quarter is a season for me.
yep.
Each quarter of the year is a season. And I'm on season 6 right now, and season 6 feels really good. I've really streamlined a lot of things. I'm doing the show solo now. I used to have a co-host, and I'm doing the show solo now, and things have been streamlined, and it makes me look back at the first 60 some episodes, and I'm like, ugh, why didn't I just do this from the beginning? So, but at the same time, it's like that was all part of the learning process. And you know, could I have more download numbers than if I had done it the right way? Yeah, but at the same time, maybe no, because I would have put it off, and I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have 70 some episodes out there. I might not have even launched. So I'm glad that I kind of figured it out on the fly, but I'm also glad that I've listened to feedback and made adjustments along the way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love the um I love the looking back and seeing how far you've come. And there is a little bit of a, oh, I wish I would have done it sooner, but
Oh, it's hard for me to listen to old episodes because I was the one who edited all those episodes, and I'm like, why'd you miss this? Why'd you leave that in there? Ah,
yeah.
oh, I can't. I've got to listen to it once and then flush it. But the recent episodes, if people are looking for a place to start, I'd say start at episode 67, and then you can kind of work your way from there. And if people want a starter pack of, hey, what episodes do you recommend? Give me a follow on Instagram, mindful_midlife_crisis, and I'll shoot you a message and just say, here, these are my favorite episodes. These are the fan favorite episodes, because not all of them are good.
Feel that. Feel that. Well, awesome. We got a couple more questions for you about dreams and goals. What are the top 1 to 2 skills that you need to develop right now to make these dreams and goals come true, of like monetizing the podcast, using the podcast to lead to mindfulness events for people who are interested, and then being a speaker and presenter at events? What are those skills you need to develop?
Yeah, I think discipline plus consistency equals success.
Hmm.
So, you know, could I be more disciplined? Yes. Could I be more consistent? Yes. So I really want to work on that kind of thing. Um, I think networking is so crucial. I
Yep.
think networking is so crucial, and making those connections. But then, like, one thing that I always am is curious. But the problem is that I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And so to me, I feel like that's why it's so important to have those conversations with people who do know a little bit more than I do, but then also, like I said, reciprocate and make sure that I'm providing value in some way, shape, or form. I think too, the other thing that I need to cultivate a little bit more is just a an appreciation for what I have to offer. And sometimes I get caught up in, well, you're a straight white male and you don't have kids, you've never been married. Really, what's your experience? Really, what's your adversity have you faced? That kind of thing. So I get caught up in that a little bit too. And so I have to check myself and say, you know what? There's an audience still for that. And, you know, it may not resonate with everybody, and you might not be everybody's cup of tea, but you might be somebody's shot of bourbon. And I have to make sure that I give credit to Rich Bracken for that because he was a guest on our show. And I remember when he said that, and I was like, oh, I really like that. I really like that idea of you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you might be somebody's shot of bourbon. So shout out Rich Bracken for that statement right there, because it's true. And like, I'm a recovering people pleaser, very much so. And I think that's why being a dean was so difficult to me, is because I just wanted to make people happy. I just wanted to help people grow. And when they would have visceral reactions to to what I was sharing with them, or the bad news that I was delivering, that was really hard. That was really hard. And so working on being less of a people pleaser, and just kind of and taking action and believing in that action. But at the same time, in order to take action, I need to develop more discipline and more consistency. And I think once I develop that discipline and consistency, then you're going to be more prolific, right? I just saw this post the other day that I really liked. And it was something about, if you produce something and you get haters, produce more of it. Produce more of it, because you're just going to continue getting better at whatever it is, and more people are going to resonate with it. And that, I summarize that very poorly, but it really it resonated with me. It's just like, no, there, everyone's going to, not everyone, but there are going to be people out there who just shoot you down because they got nothing better to do. Rather than focus on that, focus on the mission. Focus on the people who are quietly supporting you. People will, it's easy to loudly criticize, but those aren't the ones to listen to. Listen to the ones who are quietly supporting you. And I get a lot of text messages that are sent just to me saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. And that's what keeps me going, because that's the affirmation. I'm a words of affirmation guy. So I like when people are saying, hey, you're doing a great thing. Keep it up. And so that motivates me to want to do more. And I think that's why it's important to, like, a guy like me who does enjoy words of affirmation, who does enjoy quality time. It's why it's important for me to network. It's why it's important for me to socialize with people, because I want to continue providing value, and I want to get feedback about whether or not what I'm producing, what the content that I have, is it of value? And if it is not, what is it that I can provide for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. The value exchange is so key to kind of what this all started with, networking, right? Like, if you don't have a value vehicle, if you don't have that heart to exchange value or really add value first, you're not going to network well. But awesome, Billy, that is all we got for you today. We're running a little short on time. So is there anything else you want to chat about real quick before we sign off?
No, if people like what they heard here, give me a follow on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. You can go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can listen to the episode. If you're looking for a starter pack, shoot me a message. You can email me at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com too. I'm really looking forward to developing this mindfulness business, and I even hate to say mindfulness business because then it feels like I'm, you'd think of mindfulness in corporate. They don't seem to really go together. But to me, mental health is a business. Mental health should be the number one business that you are trying to grow.
Mm,
And I really believe that mindfulness is a great place to start. Mindfulness might not be for everybody. I get that. But for me, like, mindfulness not only changed my life, but it most likely saved my life too. And we're always practicing something, whether it's jealousy, whether it's hate, whether it's love, whether it's understanding. We're always practicing something. And so we should be wanting to practice something that continues to help us grow.
mm,
And and mindfulness is something, it is a tool in the toolbox. It's not the only tool, but it is a tool in the toolbox that can help us reflect, learn, and grow so that we can live a more purpose-filled life, so that we can enjoy more aspects of life. And so if that's something that interests people, shoot me a message. Let's connect, listen to a few episodes, see if you like the cut of my jib, so to speak, and I'd love to connect. I'd love to provide value, and I hope we are able to reciprocate value for each other.
there we go. Well, Billy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and if you guys are listening to this and you loved what Billy had to say, make sure to check out the show. All the links to check him out on the podcast and on social media will be down in the show notes. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.